Hey everyone, and welcome back to Talk Tensors. You know it's your favorite machine learning paper deep dive podcast.
That's right.
And today,
We're diving deep.
we're diving deep into a paper that is really kind of making some noise, I think, in the world of multimodal AI.
Yeah.
It's called Janus Pro, Unified Multimodal Understanding and Generation with Data and Model Scaling.
Catchy title.
Catchy, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to get started, like what is it about this paper that's so interesting to you?
Well, it's tackling a really big problem. Researchers have been trying to figure out how to make a single model that can understand different types of data, like, images and text, but then also generate them.
So it can like answer my questions about a picture,
Yeah.
and then also turn around and like paint a picture based on what I tell it.
Yeah, exactly. Like one model doing both understanding and generation, which has been really hard to do.
Okay, so that's ambitious, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know we've talked about multimodal AI before on the show, but this seems like it's trying to take things to a whole new level.
It really is. And what's interesting is that this model, Janus Pro, seems to be doing a really good job at both of those things, which is, like I said, not easy to do.
Well, the paper keeps mentioning separate encoders, and I'm not sure I totally get what that means. Can you kind of unpack that concept for us a little bit?
Yeah, so basically you can think of encoders as these like little modules that process different kinds of data, right? And the problem is a lot of models out there try to use the same encoder for both understanding and generating. But that kind of leads to compromises, It's like trying to use the same tool to write a novel and paint a portrait.
Right. You might get okay results, but it's probably not going to be a masterpiece in either one.
Exactly. And so what Janus Pro does is it says, no, we're going to have different encoders, one for understanding and one for generating. And that way each encoder can specialize and become really good at its job.
So it's like having a team of experts instead of just one generalist trying to do it all.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Okay, so this model Janus Pro, it didn't just like appear out of thin air, right?
Right.
There's some history here, right? There was an earlier model called Janus, right?
Yes.
I remember seeing that paper. So how does Janus Pro kind of build on that earlier work?
So Janus was kind of like the first model to really show that this decoupled encoding approach could work.
Okay.
But Janus was, a smaller model. It had 1.5 billion parameters. And so Janus Pro is like taking that concept and really scaling it up. We're talking about 7 billion parameters.
Okay, so a lot bigger.
A lot bigger, yeah.
So just to be clear for our listeners, when we talk about parameters, we're basically talking about the building blocks of these AI models, right?
Sure.
The more parameters, the more complex and powerful the model can be.
Exactly.
Okay, so bigger model.
Yep.
But they didn't just make it bigger,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the paper also talks about some other key improvements they made.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through some of those? Like, what are the main things that set Janus Pro apart from its predecessor?
Yeah, so I'd say the main things are they improved the training, they used way more data, and they changed the architecture.
Okay, let's break those down one by one. So first, training. How do they make the training process more efficient for Janus Pro?
Well, one thing they did was they realized that using ImageNet, a huge data set that everyone uses, wasn't really the best way to train for both understanding and generation.
Okay.
So they actually dropped ImageNet from one of the training stages and focused on more targeted training methods, working smarter, not just harder.
So it's like realizing you don't need to read the whole encyclopedia to learn about a specific topic. You can just focus on the relevant textbooks and articles.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's talk about data. You mentioned they used way more data for training Janus Pro. What kind of data are we talking about here?
Oh, all kinds of stuff. So for understanding tasks, they used image captions, tables, charts, documents, even memes.
Memes.
Yeah, they really wanted to expose the model to as much diverse information as possible so that it could learn to understand the relationships between all these different visual and textual elements.
So basically, they just threw everything but the kitchen sink at it.
Pretty much.
And what about for generation? How did they train Janus Pro to actually create images from text descriptions?
So for that, they used a combination of real images, obviously, and something called synthetic data.
Synthetic data. Okay, now what is that?
So synthetic data is like artificially created data that's specifically designed to help the model learn certain things.
Like giving it extra practice problems tailored to specific skills it needs to master.
Yeah, exactly. And they found that using synthetic data was really helpful in improving the quality and the stability of the images that Janus Pro could generate.
Okay, so they improved the training, they expanded the data, they supersized the model. But the big question is, did it actually work?
Ah, that's the exciting part. But I think we should probably save those details for after the break.
Okay, so we're back, and I'm dying to know, did all those changes actually make a difference? Like, how did Janus Pro actually perform when they put it to the test?
It did really well, like way better than expected. In benchmarks that are supposed to test how well a model understands both visuals and text, Janus Pro was at the top, even beating out some models that were way bigger, which is crazy.
Way bigger, like more parameters. It's like a Chihuahua taking down a Great Dane? That doesn't seem right. Can you give us an example of one of those benchmarks and how it did?
Sure. One example is MMBench. It's a test to see how good a model is at understanding and making sense of visual and text info together. And get this, Janus Pro, with its 7 billion parameters, did better than a model called TokenFlow XL, which has 13 billion parameters.
Okay, so it's a beast at understanding stuff, but can it actually create, can it make good images from text descriptions? Are they detailed? Are they accurate? Spill the tea.
Oh, absolutely. It crushed tests like Genival, which looks at how well a model follows instructions when creating images. And then on DPG Bench, which is known for giving really complex prompts, Janus Pro was a rock star. Actually, on Genival, it had an 80% accuracy rate, which is better than big names like JLE3 and Stable Diffusion.
All right, I'm officially impressed. These are some serious steps. So I get why people are excited about this paper, but all this technical stuff, it's great, but what does it actually mean for regular people? What real world stuff can we expect to see come out of this?
The possibilities are kind of endless, to be honest. Imagine a search engine that gets what's actually in pictures, not just the words next to them. So you could search for a dog wearing a blue hat playing frisbee at the beach and actually get pictures of that.
That would be so much better than scrolling through pages of random dog pics. No more guesswork.
Exactly. And think about design tools. What if you could just describe what you want and the AI creates it? Game changer for artists, designers, architects, anyone who works visually.
It'd be like having an AI assistant that can actually bring your ideas to life. But this could be big for other fields too, right? Healthcare, education, even scientific research.
Oh, totally. In healthcare, Janus Pro could help doctors diagnose stuff from medical images. In education, imagine personalized learning tailored to each student. And research. Analyzing tons of data to find hidden patterns. We're really just getting started with what this could do.
It's wild to think how much potential impact this could have. Feels like we're watching AI take a massive leap forward. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's take a step back. I mean, how did we even get here? What's the history that led to this breakthrough?
Yeah, a little history lesson is always good. You see, for ages, AI research was like a bunch of separate islands. Computer vision, natural language processing, speech recognition, all doing their own thing with their own methods and models.
Like different branches of science, each in their own little bubble.
Exactly. But then, around the early 2010s, things started changing. Deep learning came along, and researchers began trying to bring these different areas together.
I remember those early multimodal models. It was pretty exciting at the time. Suddenly, AI could not only see stuff in a picture, but also describe it in words or even write captions for a whole scene.
True. But those early models, they were kind of limited. They had trouble with anything too complex or unclear, and they were very picky about the data they were trained on.
So they weren't really getting the connections between the different types of data, right? More like just putting pieces of info next to each other without really understanding how they fit together.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And that's where models like Janus and now Janus Pro, they're different. They're not just combining data. They're actually learning to understand the connections between them, the meaning behind the pixels and words.
It sounds like we're moving from like a surface level understanding to
Yeah.
something deeper, more about the concepts and relationships.
Yes, exactly. That's what makes this so exciting. It's not just making things a bit better, it's pushing the limits of what AI can do and opening up so many new possibilities.
Speaking of pushing limits, I think this brings us to our favorite part of the show, the Novel Notions segment, where we put on our futurist hats and imagine the weird, wacky, and wonderful implications of this tech. What's got your imagination fired up?
Well, I think it's fascinating to think that Janus Pro and models like it could lead to entirely new jobs we can't even imagine yet. We talk about prompt engineering, but what else might pop up?
Okay, I'm all ears. What kind of AI-powered careers might we see in the future? What jobs will our kids be applying for thanks to Janus Pro?
Well, one idea is AI experience designers, people who create these crazy immersive experiences that blend the real and digital worlds seamlessly. Imagine going to a museum where exhibits come to life with augmented reality powered by Janus Pro, or learning in a simulation that adapts to your style.
That sounds amazing, like the ultimate level of interactive entertainment and education. But wouldn't designing those experiences require like a deep understanding of both AI and human psychology?
Definitely. These AI experience designers would need to be both tech wizards and creative geniuses. They'd have to know how to work with models like Janus Pro, but also deeply understand how humans perceive, feel, and learn.
It's crazy to think we might need whole new fields of study to keep up with AI. It's like we're at the beginning of a text-driven renaissance or something. But with any new tech, there's always a flip side. What are some of the risks or challenges with a model as powerful as Janus Pro?
That's a really important question. One worry is misuse. In the wrong hands, a model like this could be used to make super realistic deepfakes, spread misinformation, or even mess with people's emotions.
It's like any powerful tool,
Yeah.
right? It can be used for good or bad.
Yeah.
We need to think carefully about the ethics of all this.
Absolutely. Another concern is jobs. As AI gets better, it's going to automate some jobs currently done by humans. We need to be prepared for that and make sure everyone benefits from these advances.
It's a tricky balance, right?
Yeah.
We want AI to make our lives better, but we need to be smart and thoughtful about how it fits into society.
Exactly. We need open and honest discussions about the good and bad of AI and work together to create a future where this technology is used responsibly and ethically.
That's a great point. It sounds like we've got a lot to figure out as we enter this exciting new era of AI. But for now, let's dive a bit deeper into the technical side. How does Janus Pro actually work?
Okay, let's talk more about those separate encoders. Remember, one is for understanding multimodal input, the other for generating images from text descriptions.
Right, like specialized teams. But how do they actually talk to each other and work together? They can't be completely separate.
You're right. The magic happens in the middle where the outputs from both encoders meet. That's where the model learns to connect the visual and textual information, building a rich understanding of the world.
So it's like both encoders are feeding their insights into a central hub where everything comes together.
Exactly. That central hub is where the model learns to understand the relationships between different types of data, letting it do both understanding and generation tasks really well.
It sounds incredibly complex.
Mhm.
How do they even design and train something like this? What kind of sorcery is involved?
Well, it's a mix of cutting-edge deep learning techniques, massive data sets, and a whole lot of computing power. But one cool thing about Janus Pro is how it uses attention mechanisms.
Attention mechanisms. Is that like the AI equivalent of focusing its attention on the most important stuff?
You got it. Attention mechanisms allow the model to pick and choose what parts of the input to focus on, just like we do when we're taking in information.
So instead of trying to process everything at once, it can hone in on the key details.
Precisely. And that's really important in multimodal learning, where you're dealing with complex connections between different types of data. Attention mechanisms help the model cut through the noise and get to the good stuff, making it much more efficient and accurate.
That makes sense. It's like being able to highlight the most important sentences in a book or zoom in on a specific part of a picture.
Exactly. And by using attention mechanisms in Janus Pro, the researchers were able to get much better performance in both understanding and generating.
Okay, I'm starting to wrap my head around the technical side of this model.
Yeah.
But what were some of the toughest things the researchers had to deal with while creating Janus Pro? Any major roadblocks?
Oh, for sure. Building something this complex is no walk in the park. One huge challenge was the sheer amount of data. Training a model with billions of parameters on a data set with images, text, tables, and more requires a ton of computing power and storage.
I can only imagine. It's like trying to cram the entire Library of Congress into a single computer.
Maybe not that extreme, but you get the idea. They had to find ways to spread the training across multiple computers and make the best use of their resources.
So it wasn't just a matter of throwing more computers at the problem, they had to be clever about it.
Exactly. Another tough part was balancing understanding and generation. Like we said earlier, most models aren't good at both.
Right, like trying to be a world-class chef and a concert pianist at the same time. Tough to master both.
Exactly. They had to carefully tweak the model and the training process to make sure neither task suffered. And based on the results, it looks like they found the right balance.
It's really impressive what they accomplished. Janus Pro is a testament to their hard work and creativity. But what's next? What are the next big things in multimodal AI?
Great question. One thing researchers are looking at is adding more modalities. Right now, Janus Pro is all about images and text. But what about audio, video, 3D data, even sensory stuff like touch or smell?
Whoa, that's next level. Imagine AI that can understand and create across all our senses. It'd be like stepping to a virtual world that feels completely real.
Exactly. And that's just one path. They're also trying to make these models more robust, adaptable, and explainable. We need these AI systems to be reliable, fair, and transparent in how they make decisions.
Sounds like there's still a lot to do, but the future of multimodal AI is bright.
Totally agree. We're just starting out, and I can't wait to see what amazing things we discover along the way.
Me neither. And on that note, it's time for us to wrap up this episode of Talk Tensors.
It's been great diving into this research with you.
The feeling is mutual. We hope you all enjoyed this deep dive into Janus Pro. As always, the full paper is linked in the show notes. And don't forget to share your thoughts and questions with us on social media. Until next time, keep exploring the amazing world of machine learning.
Welcome back to Talk Tensors. Before we went to the ads, we were talking about all the cool stuff Janus Pro could do. Now it's time for novel notions, where we put our thinking caps on and imagine what could happen with this tech down the line. What wild ideas has this paper sparked for you?
Well, I keep thinking about how models like Janus Pro could really blur the lines between the real world and the digital world. As they get better and we use them more, it's going to get interesting.
Blur the lines? What do you mean by that?
Imagine a world where you just talk or gesture and you're interacting with digital info and virtual spaces. Like, picture having a meeting in a virtual conference room, but it feels totally real with lifelike avatars, and stuff you can interact with. That's like straight out of a sci-fi movie. But with what Janus Pro can already do with images and text, it's not that crazy, is it?
Exactly. And as these models get even smarter, they could figure out what we need and what we like. So they could create these super personalized experiences that are unique to each of us.
Like a digital twin that knows us better than we know ourselves. But wouldn't that be kind of creepy? Like, what about privacy?
Oh, that's definitely something we need to figure out. It's a big challenge as this tech moves forward. We have to make sure that these AI systems don't invade our privacy, that we have control over our data and how it's used.
It sounds like we're entering a weird time where the real and the digital are kind of blending together. Exciting, but also kind of scary, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
But I think it's so important to talk about this now while it's still early, so we can guide this tech in a way that's good for everyone.
I agree. Being proactive is key. We need to be thinking about the ethical side of AI and what it means for society. But on a more positive note, all this blending of realities, it opens up some insane possibilities for creativity and innovation.
Absolutely. Think about new types of art, immersive stories, even totally new ways of communicating and connecting with each other. The possibilities are mind-blowing.
It's like we're on the edge of a new renaissance powered by tech.
Exactly. And that's what makes this research so awesome. It's not just about the tech itself, it's about pushing the boundaries of what we can do, exploring our creative potential.
I don't know about you, but my mind is officially blown. Janus Pro really highlights how AI is full of both incredible potential and some serious challenges.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's up to all of us to make sure this technology is used for good.
Couldn't agree more. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Talk Tensors.
Thanks for having me. It's been a blast talking about this research with you.
The pleasure was all ours. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Janus Pro. Don't forget to check out the full paper linked in the show notes and let us know what you think on social media. Until next time, keep on learning.